Hello, Antoine. How are you? Welcome to another episode of the Drachmas and Denarii podcast.
Hey Sam, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks. It's finally fall. I'm enjoying the cold weather.
That must be nice. We're about to head into a shaping up to be a pretty hot summer down here.
Yeah, fair enough. Down under, I forgot everything's flipped. Yeah, I just had a nice
Yep.
coffee outside, wearing a sweater. Went to a farmer's market, so a little bit of a different vibe.
Perfect late October or late September vibe, I mean.
Yeah, and even better, we've got some feature auctions coming up. It's feature auction season. Today we're going to be reviewing CNG Sale 121, and that'll be from October 6th through the 8th, and I think we've got a lot of really cool coins here to share.
Yeah, I agree. Fall is auction season, and CNG's got a pretty good lineup for us this time around.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know that especially even this January, I'll be able to go to the New York International Show. I'm looking forward to that too. Seeing some of those coins in person from Triton and Knack and whoever else. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
That is very exciting.
Yeah, but today we'll focus on these fall auction sales, and I think the first coin we've got pulled up is from Lucania Metapontian from circa 290 to 280 BC. And Antoine, I think you had pulled this coin if you want to go a bit more into what makes it so special and maybe justifies that $15,000 estimate.
Right. Well, this one, Metapontum, I think, is one of the main cities. Everybody knows that main cities of Magna Graecia. Numismatically, they had this amazing run spanning pretty close to 300 years, or a little bit over actually, if you include the Carthaginian issues. And yeah, this coin, I mean, it costs a lot more than your average Nomos ever would. The reverse, fairly bland, it's a very nice grainier, but it's just a grainier, just like 95% of the others from this series. But that obverse, the portrait, first of all, usually it's Ceres slash Demeter slash Persephone that's on the obverse. There's a few rare types that have Hera and some that have Leucippus, but Heracles is quite rare. There's one type that was made under Alexander the Molossian, who is Pyrrhus's uncle, and I believe he was a cousin of Alexander. He might have been an uncle of his as well. Um, so there's one type made back in the 340s, 330s, and 40s under Metapontian rule, and I believe that's more of a classic sort of beardless, wearing the lion skin type. Whereas this one, this is just an incredible portrait. He's got the beard, he's got, I believe it's a diadem on, and the lion skin is there, but it's very understated, just the paw sort of flung around his neck, tied off.
I noticed that, and
Um,
the club too behind his head.
yep. Yeah, this is very much an just like one of the nicest portraits I've seen, I've got to say, honestly.
I want to say it kind of reminds me of those Punic issues, the Melkart busts. I feel like I see a lot of similarities here in this Heracles and those.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a bit early to be, um, yeah, it's a little bit earlier than the Punic issues that have Melkart, but it also reminds me a bit of Philip V almost, the Macedonian king, which it's far too early. It's about a century too early to be that. But it's got very similar features to some of his portraits as well.
Especially that nose and mouth, I think. That's like that kind of stands out to me. Is just very bold and expressive here.
Yes, absolutely. He's got a big schnoz.
Hmm. And do you know, does this issue have any provenance? I guess back to 1994. That's decent.
Yeah, it's not bad these days. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more lurking, but I
Yeah.
guess someone would have to take a closer look.
Looking here too, it seems like it's matched to a lot of plates, the dies at least, which is a good sign that it pretty much has what seems to be a consensus on the best dies for the issue. But
I'd
yeah, I would
be
say
very
overall,
shocked if someone could find better dyes for
yeah,
this issue.
obviously overall a great issue. Even have some nice toning too, sort of a muted green blue. But yeah, I think that's an incredible coin. Bit too rich for my taste, but very nice nonetheless. And I'm sure someone's going to be very happy when they get to win this.
Oh, same here. This is not an everyday coin, but whoever gets it, I feel like at 9,000 it's still quite cheap at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the fun thing about the feature auction season. You get to see so many cool coins that normally wouldn't come up. That's what I like. Just window dressing, window shopping here, looking through all these nice coins. Probably can never afford one like this, but I'm going to enjoy looking at it and seeing what they sell for anyway.
Absolutely. And who knows, one day you get lucky, you win that lottery,
Yeah, you
might be
never
able to
know.
get one of your own.
Yeah, this one's incredible too. The next lot we have, lot 144 from Sicily, Syracuse, Philistus, the wife of Hieron II, I might have mispronounced that, 275 to 215 BC. It says struck circa 218 to 214 BC. It is an AR, so silver 16 litri issue, or otherwise known as a tetradrachm. I think just about the same weight scale there, but I would say beautifully executed, nice dies, and also decent provenance too, back to 1965.
Yeah, this one it's good provenance. It's a nice hefty coin. Yeah, with the names, I don't know. It gets kind of tough, right? You don't hear these words pronounced out loud very often, so everybody has their own way of saying it.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, Philistus and Hieron, that's how I'd say it. Yeah, this is an interesting type because you don't see very many women in numismatics. You see a few out of Egypt, obviously Cleopatra, Arsinoe, and Berenike as well. And then Philistus is one of the other major ones in the Greek world. Women really didn't have a very prominent place in Greek society. I mean, there's a lot of queens and there are a lot of stereotypes around the queens, but yeah, there's not a whole lot of representation, especially not of them in power. Especially in this case where her husband was still alive the whole time.
Yeah. Definitely speaks to her role, just the importance given to her, maybe at the court dignitaries, or I wonder, has there ever been work researched on why she was so prominently featured?
I have to admit, I haven't looked into it as much as I should have, so I don't actually know. As far as Hieron, though, he's one of like the key figures in the Roman Carthaginian saga. He comes up a few times because he controlled Syracuse for a very long, fairly stable reign, and he sort of flip-flops between Carthage and then Rome, and yeah, he keeps the peace, but he also eggs them on. He's an interesting character, and he does manage to keep Syracuse relevant for its roughly 60 years that he ruled. He's an interesting guy. And clearly he was a bit more progressive maybe than some of his contemporaries.
I find it interesting too that a lot of these issues you kind of expect, I think, the obverse to have some of the details, some of the importance here, but I feel like on this issue the reverse actually stands out a lot. That quadriga, it's got incredible detail on those horses, their faces. I just feel like the composure there is excellently done, and it almost draws away from the obverse just because that reverse is so nice.
Yeah, it's the refreshing take on the classic Syracusan quadriga design. You have Nike here actually leading the quadriga instead of just crowning the charioteer. And yeah, I'm not sure the exact symbolism of that, but it's, if I was to speculate, it's probably Nike steering Syracuse, which is the quadriga, through some turbulent times, but Syracuse is coming out on top. Obviously, the legend is important because it says Basiliscus, which is queen, instead of Basilios, king. So that's interesting. It's important. And then, yeah, for this one in particular, the portrait is nicer than usual, and the price reflects that, as well as the
Definitely.
provenance. Although, yeah, this series is one that your average collector could, with a bit of patience and a bit of money, obviously, come to collect fairly easily. You could take the 4 off of that, and you can probably find examples for, mid to high 3 figures.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe with a few problems, but still, I think you're definitely right. It's definitely a doable issue if you're willing to take some wear. I think most collectors could probably easily afford one of these issues. But yeah, overall, once again, a very nice coin, I think. I mean, I don't know prices. I guess once these sort of enter that high-end range of nice dies, nice style, little to no wear, I feel like you never really know what they'll go for, but I feel like that the estimate at least seems fair for the quality here, the condition of the dies and all of that.
Yeah, I believe the previous sale price from a year or two back for this was closer to double what it currently is at now, including the conversion rate and everything. Well, the conversion rate up until recently. But yeah, I think there's still some room to go on this one, probably.
Yeah, it's a good time to be an American buyer right now. I feel like it's not something we get to say often, but for once the euro's weaker.
It is never a good time to be an Australian buyer.
Yeah, that's true. I imagine that's always a brutal conversion right there.
It was pretty nice with the pound last week. British auctions felt pretty good.
Yeah, Harmers, any luck there?
Oh, I actually did a relatively rare Brutus type. It's a Fourré,
Nice.
but it's an officially minted Fourré, so that's pretty nice.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Congrats. Yeah, I was looking,
Thank
but
you.
in the end, all my targets kind of went too high too quick, so I didn't really follow the auction in the end. But yeah, congrats
That's
on that.
bad.
We'll have to do a recent win video here in a little bit.
Absolutely, we're a little overdue for that.
Yeah, I would agree. I've had some cool wins recently. But speaking of cool wins, it seems like someone might have some luck here. We've got an awesome Second Punic War Carthage half shekel. And here we've got, I guess, an estimate of about $10,000, no current bid. Honestly, I'm not sure about prices on these, but this is a very nice example. You've got a decent provenance here, I think, and then once again, you've got those die matches, which just kind of go to state that these are probably the best dies for the issue.
Yeah, provenance is good. It's enough to make sure the Italian government won't take it back in a few years.
Yeah.
They won't come knocking. So that's important, especially when you're spending 6 to 10,000 or more dollars. Yeah, this is a really cool issue. Obviously, nobody knows for certain who is on the obverse. Is it Melkart, Heracles? Is it some other deity we don't know about? Is it Hannibal? And it might just be Hannibal.
Hmm.
The reverse leaves a little bit less to the imagination. It's pretty obvious what it is. It's, his war elephants that he brought over the Alps midwinter. He started with, I think, 36 and ended up with 3. So not amazing, not a great conversion right there, but he still managed to bring elephants over the Alps in winter. So good on him.
Here's a small digression, but if you look at the reverse here, you see sort of towards the rear end of the elephant all those scratches. I would bet money that's on the slab and not the coin. Kind of another example of how slabs sort of misconstrue the view of an image here, that those scratches you might think are on the coin, but if you follow that up towards the top, you can see the scratches go off the coin. So I'm pretty sure that's actually on the plastic film protecting the coin and not the coin itself. Just food for thought here real quick while we're looking at that, and on the topic of our last video, slabs, you can kind of see here how those impede photography and might make you think a coin has flaws it doesn't actually have.
Oh, that's actually a great point that you bring up. Yeah, even if you look at the shadows where the slab prongs are, the streaks get even brighter, which tells you it's definitely on the slab.
Yeah, just food for thought here. But overall, yeah, this is a lovely issue. I think that elephant is very well executed, and I mean, that's always a popular motif. I feel like elephants sell for a premium all the time just because people like the animal, and even here you've got that wonderful connection to the Second Punic War, crossing the Alps, all of that. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see this coin go for well above estimate.
Yeah, it's an expensive series. If you're patient, there's actually one, I think, a couple weeks ago that sold for 1,600 euros, which I felt was a really good price.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as nice as this, obviously, but it had a pretty clear elephant, an okay face, and yeah, I think it had some provenance to go with it as well. So
Yeah,
it's definitely the sort of thing if you have some money, if you're willing to focus in a bit and get a few key types, it's definitely doable.
Yeah, if you can accept a problem coin, I think it'd be an easy series to collect if you have patience and maybe want to get 1 or 2 a year. Yeah, that's what they call me, Mr. Problem Coin. That's how I get a lot of rare Byzantines. So I can afford the ones that are half broken or scratched. You know what? I'll go for it. But yeah, we can
Broken
go.
coin still has all the history. That's how I see it.
Exactly. Plus, you can get them in group lots. But yeah, speaking of non-broken coins, the ones that I buy wouldn't make it into a feature auction. But here's another wonderful type from Boeotia, Thebes, circa 390 to 382 BC. It is an AR stater. It's got a wonderful example of that Boeotian shield type, then the amphora on the back. I'm not sure if I know the magistrate here. I know some of them you can get like well-known individuals from the era, but I don't know if this one is tied to anyone in particular that we know of. But either way, I'd say a nice coin. I don't know if it's quite what I would say is like feature auction caliber premium, but I think it's still a decent coin.
Yeah, this is definitely towards the lower end of a feature auction. This is the sort of stuff that the high rollers will definitely gloss over. But that's why this is also something that I feel like average is kind of a tough word to put out there, but the average collector of Greek coins should have one of these and can definitely afford to get one of these if they're collecting other types as well. Yeah, everybody talks about Sparta, about Athens, about Corinth, but I think Thebes is a city that gets glossed over a lot of the time. And there's the Persian Wars, then there's the Peloponnesian War, then you've got everything that goes on with Philip and Alexander, and the history in the middle there, the Corinthian War, and then the Theban hegemony. It sort of gets lost by the wayside. Those years 390s up till the 350s, nobody really talks about it that much. But yeah, Thebes was a very important city in Greece for the better part of that half century there, between 400 and 350. And I think these types, they're really simple, but they're actually quite pleasant to look at as well. It's a very straightforward design.
Yeah, they're usually well executed. You can see here in the reverse, I'll zoom in, but that M4 has got wonderful handles and detailing here. I mean, this example is a bit worn. You can kind of see that if there wasn't anywhere, you'd probably have lots of patterning on that base as well.
It's a lot cheaper than buying an amphora as well. So
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I do agree though. I feel like this is one of those classic coin types. I feel like if you're going to be a Greek collector, you probably want to get one of these, an Athenian tetradrachm. I'm not sure what else would qualify as a classic type. Maybe the Aspendos stators, the ones with the wrestlers and the slingers. I feel like that's a kind of cheaper classic one that you can get for $100 or $200.
yeah, that, any of the Alexander coins.
Oh yeah, of
If
course.
you're really wanting to spend a bit more, Olympic coinage, absolute must-have.
Yeah, Olympic coinage is very nice. I feel like if I collected Greek, that'd be one area where I might see myself doing it, getting one or two nice coins a year. But yeah, we can go ahead and move on to our next lot here. We've got lot 282, a wonderful example from Crete, minted circa 330 to 270 BC. It is another silver stater, and this is of course a famous type with Europa seated on. Actually, this isn't a bull issue. What? Sorry, I thought this was a bull issue. Europa on an eagle. Okay, interesting. And I guess it's got the bull on the reverse here. But I know Crete
Yeah.
coinage is very famous for their mythological types. Um, so I presume this sort of falls under that line and becomes very desirable. And I would not be surprised. Yeah, I was going to say that estimate seems quite low.
Maybe I shouldn't have shared this one. The estimate's too high. Don't bid, guys. Don't bid. It's already too high. No, I am actually eyeing this one myself. It's yeah, Crete is an interesting place because on the one hand it's like this cradle of Greek-ish civilization with the Mycenaeans, right? And then on the other hand, by the time the Greeks really came into their own, Crete was basically a backwater. No one really cared for it that much. But their coinage is really spectacular in terms of for a collector. It's kind of crude, rough around the edges, but the themes that they have, like this one, yeah, it's Europa. She's seated on a tree, and the eagle is well, Zeus was, yeah, I think we all know how the story goes there. So it's some not very family friendly stuff going on there between the eagle being Zeus and then Europa, and then the obverse or reverse actually is the bull in this case. So obviously the story of Zeus transforming into the bull, going to Phoenicia where Europa lived, getting to know her, and then running away with her, sending her off to Crete where she basically founds the Greek race, I guess. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've got some powerful mythological types here on this coin, which I think is one of the reasons it's so popular with collectors. This one, I would say, not the greatest provenance, but I think that's all right. I'm not the biggest proponent of needing to have provenance in every single coin. I think this is definitely one where it's nice enough that you can justify having what do you say, a less well-known coin with history where who's owned it.
I agree. As long as you're not emailing customs telling them that you own this, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I'd say it's a very nice coin, and I'll be curious and wish you the best on that, and hopefully you can win.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath, but thank you.
Yeah. All right, next up we've got from the Seleucid Empire, we've got Adrachem from Antiochus III the Greats. This was struck 197 to 192 BC. Uncertain mints. I would presume this is a popular type with the elephant on the reverse. I'm not sure how common these are as far as the coin goes, but this says that it's unpublished with a portrait type.
I'm actually glad that you brought up that last point. I don't think we like to talk about it too much publicly, but hordes are a real thing and they hit the market, they come and they go. This is a type that's been, well, I won't say that there's been a horde recently, but there have definitely been a lot more of this type on the market recently. So if somebody's looking to get one, now would be a good time.
Hmm.
Yeah, elephants are always popular. I don't know what it is about the elephant. It's just, it always gets people excited. And I guess I mean, I get excited about elephants too, so it's
Who
not just
doesn't?
a, yeah, exactly.
Big and loud animals. It's awesome. They're definitely awe-inspiring.
Yeah, they need more of them in movies. They need more movies about the ancient world in general, but yeah. Yeah, the Seleucids were very proud of their elephants, and Antiochus was, he's called the Great for a reason. He reunified the empire, went back out east, consolidated territories for a while. It didn't last forever, but still. Um, and yeah, elephants were a big deal in the ancient world in general, but especially during the Hellenistic age, and then when Seleucus strikes a deal with, I believe it was Chandragupta of India, the Maurya Empire, He's like, I'll give you basically modern day Pakistan, and you give me 500 elephants.
Hmm.
So clearly the elephants were worth a lot to the Seleucids and a lot in general. And then, yeah, he used those elephants to defeat a coalition of his enemies of Antigonus, right? So, like, it worked. It was worth it in the end.
And I don't know if it was due to that, but the elephant became the animal symbol of the house of the Seleucids, correct? It was kind of their symbol, their emblem.
Yeah, well, basically, yeah, from that episode of Seleucus's life and how he used it to consolidate his victory, him and Ptolemy, and then consolidate his empire afterwards, the elephant did become a sort of secondary emblem of their house alongside the anchor. Yeah,
Yeah, a neat
that's
little
true.
tidbit. That's one of the reasons why they're so common on. Our elephants are so common on Seleucid coinage. I think with the bronzes too, they're a lot more common than on silver. But either way, if you like elephants and want a coin, I would definitely say Seleucids are the way to go. And this still seems pretty cheap. I don't know if you kind of mentioned with this being a rare type coming on the market recently. I don't know if this portrait type, what CNG mentions being unpublished, if that's going to add a lot of premium to this, or if you can get a cheaper elephant dram elsewhere. But I feel like overall, even at the current price, 450, that's honestly not too bad for a nice Seleucid dram like this with an elephant reverse and a great bust. I feel like it's a pretty reasonable price.
I agree. The portrait's nice. The portrait on this one is a lot nicer than usual. The elephant actually isn't amazing, but
The
if you
trunk's
go
a
to the
bit
previous
a little
lot,
off.
actually there's another one in this auction.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here we go.
This one has a much better elephant in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just more well executed. The face too, if you look at the detail on the ear as well. Definitely better, but yeah, an interesting type for sure. And I feel like that's kind of a what for us at least the average collector might be a bit more reasonable in a feature auction compared to some of the examples we showed with like the Punic Shekel where it was a $10,000 estimate for an elephant coin. Here you can get one for about 300, 450. Of course, it might go up in the live auction, but just a nice example of an interesting type you can get relatively cheap.
Yeah, if you want an elephant in silver, either wait for the Julius Caesar types to come back down or grab
That's
one
never
of
gonna
these while they
happen.
last. Yeah,
I
probably
don't
not.
buy it. Yeah, I feel like it's not a good time to be a Roman Republican collector. I feel like everybody and their grandmother's getting into that and trying to buy them.
Yeah, and it's only getting tougher to buy them legally as well.
Yeah. I think, don't we have some Republican coming up? I guess we'll get to that here in a little bit. But this is a great type here. I was almost tempted to bid on these. I don't know if they're still coming out of the market as frequently as they used to, but CNG had quite a few in a number of e-auctions, their e-sales. So this is from Kyrenaica. It is a AR Didrachem, and it's got the famous reverse with the silphium plant. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but it was sort of the wonder worker miracle plant of the ancient world that had a number of different uses here. And it's kind of interesting. I think it's pretty rare on coin types, and up until recently, this hoard, it was quite desirable and hard to find, but I think this type has gotten a lot more common.
Yeah, these used to be very expensive. Now they are simply expensive. Um, yeah, Kyrene was sort of, I guess it was one of the last cities in Africa. Like that wasn't Carthage. It was one of the last Greek cities of Africa, as last as in like furthest flung. It's in modern Libya. Not sure exactly where in modern Libya, but I assume somewhere near Tripoli. Um, yeah, this type it's interesting. It actually looks like Apollo at first. You would guess it was Apollo, but it's actually a young beardless Zeus, which is quite cool. Zeus Carneos, who is I guess a Kyrenian iteration of Zeus. Looks very similar to Zeus Amon with the horn there, which was the an Egyptian variant. Um, yeah, these are a cool type, and silphium is it was basically like opium in the Greco-Roman world. It was this aphrodisiac, this relaxant, it was a cure-all, it was just everything. Put it in your tea to make you feel better, to go out and conquer the day, that sort of thing. And it was incredibly popular with the upper classes to the point where it went extinct sometime, I believe, in the
Wasn't Nero
second
the last
century
person to
AD.
ever have it? I think I remember that
It might
anecdote where he
have been.
was the last emperor to ever have the silphium plant, and he was given that, the last recorded person at least. There's also the fun
Yeah.
tidbit where you mentioned like it being an aphrodisiac. The seed of the silphium plant is actually heart shaped. There's a lot of theories that the modern heart shape, which looks nothing like the human heart, actually comes from the silphium seed, where it kind of, because it had that love connotation with the plant, that became the symbol of love in the ancient world, and that's carried on to modern times.
Oh, that is interesting. That would make sense. Actually, if you click Greek on the sidebar there, the drop down, they've actually got one of the early
Oh, here we
types.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can
yeah.
see what I'm talking about. How that seed has got the heart shape. Or is it the fruit? Maybe not the seed. Either way, yeah, part of the plant has got that heart shape, and there's a theory that that has kind of become, oops, the modern symbol of hearts and love. Yeah, either way, they're very interesting coin type here, this set. And do you know, I guess, were these manufactured or grown in Kyrenaica? Is that why they feature so prominently on their coins? Because I don't recall seeing these plants on any other coin type in the Greek world. Of course, I'm not super familiar with Greek types in general, but it seems like Kyrenaica certainly has produced the most amount of this type.
Ah, yes, that's the thing. So it was found in, I think, the mountains nearby. So I'm not sure which mountains those would be, the Atlas Mountains, perhaps. But yeah, it was found in the area, is harvested since quite a while back, like 500 or 600 BC or earlier. And then, yeah, it became quite popular in Roman times, especially. And then it sort of went extinct. I think they weren't able to really get a good industry, agriculture industry around it going anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of got exhausted to the point where then there was no more by, yeah, I'm not sure about the neuro story.
Yeah, I'm gonna
That
look that
could be
up real quick.
true.
I remember hearing that.
I always
Um,
thought it went out in the
yeah, here we
second
go. This is
century
just National
around Antoine
Geographic
of Punic.
saying silphium cured diseases and made food tasty, but Emperor Nero allegedly consumed the last stock. That it was given to Nero as a curiosity.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely a cool coin type, and I think there's a number of them for sale here in this feature auction. And I don't know if CNG still offers them in the e-sale, but either way, if you want to get one of this type, now's your chance. You can see there's so many here that this definitely is your time to get one if you're in the market for it. We can go ahead and check out our next lot. Now we're going to be entering the Roman Empire, or excuse me, Roman Republic. Uh, Arguably, if it was an empire at that point, it's part of a debate. I would say it's a Republican empire where they've got foreign holdings, but it's a discussion for a different time. This is a Denarius from Faustus Cornelius Sulla, minted in 56 BCE, and definitely a nice type here. You can see it's well struck and well preserved and has some lovely toning.
Yeah, I agree. It was an empire that was nominally a republic at that point, whatever that word meant
An
by
oligarchy,
56
really.
BC. Yeah. But yeah, this type, I think most people will be familiar with that third name there, his last name. This is not the Sulla, but it is the grandson of the Sulla. So very interesting there that their family remained quite prominent in politics even, after everything that happened around around the 80s BC. Not that long ago from when this coin was made, barely 30 years, 25 years towards the end of it. Um, but yeah, this is a cool type. So on the obverse, we have Diana. I'm actually not sure what the connection of their family to Diana is. Um, but yeah, on the reverse, the scene there is Sulla himself seated there in the chair on the throne. Not really a throne, but it's the curl chair, I assume. And then below him is Jugurtha and Massinissa. So Massinissa is there presenting him with, I guess, some sort of trophy of arms, whatever it is. And then there's Jugurtha behind him, who's kneeling down, looking face down, with his hands by his side on his hips, and he's been defeated. It's the conclusion of the Jugurthine War, which was sometime around the turn of the century, around 100 BC. And yeah, that was one of the early breaks that happened between Marius and Sulla, where who gets credit for what and all of this. Um, but yeah, this is a very important episode in Roman history because that's sort of the beginning of the end of the Republic. It's one of the points that really
Yeah.
seals the fate of Rome for the next 100 years afterwards.
Yeah, I would say like the Gracchi brothers was maybe the main catalyst that started the decline, but Sulla and Marius, their civil wars, sort of put the death nail in the coffin. I think after that, it was only a matter of time.
I agree. This was the point of no return.
But yeah, it's definitely a lovely type. Do you know, is it rare? I mean, certainly I would imagine it's desirable with such an iconic reverse type here, commemorating a famous war during a famous period in the Roman Republic.
It's not common per se, but they definitely do show up. I'd say if you were to wait 2 to 3 months, you could probably get a nice example. Maybe not quite this good, but a decent enough example.
Well, cool. Yeah, certainly a nice type, and I think any Roman fans would love to have this in their collection. We can go on to our next lot, an iconic type. This is the Plotius Plankus Denarius, where it's got the very famous reverse type, where it is the family painting they have reproduced on the coin, and the obverse is the facing bust of Medusa. And I would say this is probably one of the most iconic Roman Republican types that I can think of. I mean, besides maybe the Eidmar Denarius, I'm not sure how many other types can really compete with this just in terms of immediate recognizability.
Yeah, this is such a cool type because it combines a few different facets of Greece and Rome all into one. One of the main things is the Greeks were really known not for their sculpture, but for their painting. They did amazing wall paintings, which unfortunately haven't survived to the modern day, which sucks, obviously. Um, but a lot of those paintings, as well as the other artworks, were taken to Rome after Rome conquered different parts of Greece piecemeal. This was one of those paintings. Their family opened, I think it was kind of like almost like an ancient world equivalent of a museum with all the artifacts that they had brought when, I can't remember which one of their
It
ancestors
was like the
went.
ancient British Museum.
Yeah, it really was. um, and yeah, they were proud of that, clearly, what had happened about 100 years before this time. So on the reverse of the coin, yeah, when he got a chance, this guy put his grandfather, great grandfather, whoever's triumphant return of that painting to Rome, he put it on the coin. And the painting itself is, yeah, Nike leading a quadriga, leading the four horses of a quadriga. And it is a really superb rendering. Even numismatically, it's one of the greatest numismatic renderings on a Roman coin, I'd say. It's
Agreed.
just really wonderful.
Especially this nice. I think a lot of times the dies come sort of worn and weakly struck, but this is a great example where you can actually make out the entire artwork piece. Especially the horse there. I feel like oftentimes that's sort of, it doesn't show up well on the coin. You only get the main figure, so I think it's nice to see the whole design here just sort of complete.
Yeah, and it's also incredible because it speaks to that way that the Romans, they conquered Greece and they were clearly the stronger military power, but then Rome culturally became incredibly Greek. They were very proud of being, especially in the upper classes, of being Greekified, of having Greek culture and poetry and art as a part of their lives. That's interesting. In the end, it was the Greek culture that got passed down to the rest of the world through the
Yeah.
Romans.
There's that famous quote along the lines of, like, Rome conquered Greece, but Greece subdued Rome.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I think it's interesting too. I don't know what FFC is, but this is a plate coin there. FFC 1003. I'm not sure if that's an acronym or abbreviation for something. Are
Yeah,
you
I
familiar
haven't
with
heard
it?
of that one
I feel like
either,
oftentimes some
no.
of these minor publications will plate a coin. It's not really a big deal, so that just could be maybe a random journal. But
Yeah, I
either
think
way, it's
that's
got
possible.
a decent provenance back to 1999. I'd say not the best, but you can definitely tell that the history it's had, it sort of has stayed circulating in feature auctions, which is a good sign. That way, you know, if you buy this and ever want to resell it, you've kind of got a track record of showing that it's sort of a coin in the upper echelon of the numismatic world, and you can probably resell it at Triton or wherever you want it to go. But yeah, overall, I'd say it's definitely a great example. We can check out our next lot here. So this is lot 1028. It's a Tremises from Eugenius. And I mean, his coins are rather rare, but the reason I pulled this was the great provenance. We kind of talked about that earlier. But this has got a provenance all the way back to 1887, which I think is pretty much just about as far back as you can go without having some of the coins that have the like drilled out marks, family marks, collecting history. I forget the name of that aristocratic Italian family who had collected some coins, but the ones who had actually left like a stamp on the coin surface. Do you remember
The
their name?
Este family.
Yeah, but this I think, as far as like a written provenance goes, pretty much like the mid 19th century is probably about as far back as you can go realistically. So just thought it was pretty incredible to have a provenance that old. I mean, pretty much older than most U.S. coins. It's just the provenance alone on this.
Yeah, this was an interesting ancient piece being sold at auction when the Morgan dollars were first being made.
Yeah, and you can tell it's definitely not the nicest example. I mean, it's got tons of issues, scrapes. I think it even mentions that it's got a cribbed flan, different issues, but I think the provenance more than makes up for that. I feel like if you're sort of a high-end collector, that's the kind of piece you can show off, not even for the coin itself, but just the history behind it. I mean, 1887, I think it just stands out to me and caught my eye. And if I had the money, it'd be a coin I'd go for just for that provenance alone.
Yeah, you're right. That's about as far back as you can reasonably get. Because usually some of the 1890s is when Sotheby starts plating coins. Very few of them, and then it really takes off in the late 1900s and 1910s. And if they note a provenance for a certain coin, usually it'll be to the 1880s or 70s, and that's about as far back as you can reliably, verifiably get. So that's really impressive. Also, you noted all the issues with it. I think if you want gold of Eugenius, um,
Yeah.
you're not really spoilt for choice. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, wasn't he the last pagan emperor? I know here he's kind of unusual in that he has got a beard on his bust, his depiction. So I don't know if he's trying to harken to the philosopher emperor that way, but if I recall correctly, he was either one of the last pagan emperors or one of the last ones that would tolerate paganism.
I believe so, right? I can't remember. Wasn't Stilicho? Who's the other guy?
Aetius?
Um, no, I don't think that's it. But it's that era, yeah. And there's basically they fought against Theodosius in North Italy. They lost. They set up these statues of Jupiter and Hercules and all of this. And then Theodosius comes in out of the mountains. He's unprepared. It looks like his army's going to lose. And this massive gust of wind comes down from the Alps on the morning of the battle, right into the faces of Eugenius and his army,
The guy's name was
beaten back into the
Arbogast.
hills. Arbogast, that's
Yeah.
it. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, but definitely one of those legendary stories alongside Constantine. Divine wind, divine elements coming in to change the course of history, allegedly at least.
Well, and it was the end of paganism, you're right, because then Theodosius, being a fairly religious man, he decided after this, no more altar of Nike, no more pagan rituals, no ceremonies. The empire is now officially Christian.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was the first emperor to make that the actual official state religion. Constantine legalized and supported it, but didn't actually make it state policy.
Yep.
Yeah, but either way, a very cool piece and definitely the end of an era here. Great provenance and some interesting history as well. I think definitely, even at the estimate, I mean, once again, with the provenance back to 1887, it's a bit hard to actually estimate a value on this. I feel like the sky's the limit. I mean, you get two wealthy collectors who want a Eugenius and want some provenance like that. This could be the only example out there.
Yeah, I would actually be surprised if there's very many more that have any real provenance to them, so yeah.
Yeah. Either way, very cool. I'll be curious what that goes for. Next up, I thought this was a cool coin. Just sort of an unusual tidbit, kind of alongside what we mentioned, like the end of an era. This is Tremises from Basiliscus, right before the fall of the West. I believe it was struck in the interregnum between Julius Nepos and Romulus Augustulus. And Basiliscus was a usurper in the east, so it's kind of interesting that they struck coins in his name in the west. What makes it so interesting is that it's from the Mediolanum or Milan mints. Just kind of a random tidbit, just a piece of the confusion in the last couple of years of the Roman Empire, that as the West collapses, they were still adhering to the West and giving homage to the emperor in the East, at least pretty much up right until the fall of their empire. And Basiliscus is part of the reason why they couldn't send aid to the West. As the West sort of collapsed, Basiliscus, he revolted and usurped the throne from Zeno, and that caused a large civil war. So kind of during a time when the East should have been unified and helped out the West, his usurpation sort of ruined that and took up a lot of resources, time, and soldiers that could have been sent west that weren't. But yeah, it's not the nicest coin, but overall, if you're a collector for history and not artistry, I would say this is an amazing type to own. As for provenance, it's not too great up to 1994, but I thought either way it's an interesting piece for sure.
Yeah, this is very cool. The end of the Roman Empire is a very interesting part of history. I don't think most people give it its due, and I'm one of those people. I'm trying to get better. I've been listening to Mike Duncan's podcast.
Nice.
I'm getting towards the end of the series now, so we're into the 5th century now. Yeah, I've always thought it was very sadly poetic how Rome's history is bookended by two Romuluses. That's been one of those things.
Or two Constantines, depending on how you look at
True,
it.
yes, yeah.
But yeah, definitely interesting, and I honestly don't know the value of this coin, but I think that estimate seems pretty fair. I wouldn't be surprised if this went for a couple times that.
Yeah, I don't really know the type, but being so close to the fall, I think Romulus Augustus goes for tens of thousands, right?
Definitely, yeah. He's like 40, 50 for a Tremises, and just ridiculous amounts for a Solidus.
Yeah, 1,000 seems pretty good then.
Yeah, it seems pretty reasonable. Yeah, this next slide I pulled up I thought was pretty interesting. It's one of the rare depictions of a consul on a coin. This is from the Byzantine emperor, or still Roman, depending on how you look at it, Maurice Tiberius. I think it was struck 602, his last year that he ruled, before he was overthrown by Phocas. But it's just an interesting depiction of a consul in a chair holding up the mappa and cross. Just thought it was kind of interesting that you don't often see on coins, not only someone in consular garb, but actually a full figure.
Yeah, that's cool. I actually don't know of any Roman coins that actually depict a consul in their
Yeah,
entirety.
I
It's
forget how you
usually the
spell
Curule
these.
pair.
Yeah, if you look at the like old I don't want to pronounce that dips. I'm not sure how you say it, but there's a lot of old consular dips. If you look here, if I can find one, it's actually got a faithful representation to art. When you find consuls seated here, they've got the same sort of chair, mappa, and cross that you find on late Byzantine and Roman art. It's kind of cool to compare that to the coins and see how they're actually pretty similar.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's right on.
Yeah, I thought just an interesting piece here that we've got. And I think honestly that seems like it's a little bit much for the coin issue. These aren't super rare, but they're pretty popular due to that aforementioned tie to the consulship. I think a lot of Roman Empire collectors who don't normally venture into Byzantine collect this series just because they sort of want to have that iconography and that sort of famous symbol of a consul on a coin. And sort of tying in the consul theme, the next coin I pulled up here is the Revolt of the Heraclii. And this is actually the last coin of the empire ever to feature the word consul on it. And so the emperor we just looked at, Maurice Tiberius, he was overthrown by Phocas, and this was a counter revolt against Phocas, the man who overthrew Maurice. And what's interesting is that Heraclius and his father presented themselves not as an emperor against an emperor, but as consuls against the emperor. So they sort of, in their revolts, used the authority of the consulship and went back to old Roman traditions of sort of the power gained by the people and the senatorial classes representing the interests of the state. They sort of relied on those ideas and not of imperial rule to justify their usurpation of the throne. So it's pretty interesting in that it's one of the last is the last coin ever to feature the word consul or the office of the consulship on it, and also just that they would justify their revolt through the lens of the Roman Republic and not the empire. And in many ways, this is pointed to as the end of the Roman Empire because after this, from here on out, the office of the consulship isn't as large or prominent as it used to be. And you sort of see ideas of the res publica and of power from the people sort of declining over time throughout the history of the empire. And this is sort of a watershed moment, and it's one of the last times that a play for power was justified through sort of appealing to the people.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I didn't know that the consulship actually extended that late into the Byzantine era as an actual important institution. I assumed it was watered down to the point where it held no actual public recognition or authority, but that's quite cool.
Yeah, these are pretty rare. I wouldn't be surprised for this to go well above the current bid. I would guess there's maybe like 10 or 20 in circulation that are known. Kind of surprising this doesn't have a provenance. A lot of times they do because they're so well known. This is one of the famous Byzantine coin issues, and if people collect for history, this is definitely a type they want to have.
Yeah, and Heraclius in general is just such a tragic figure.
Yeah, lived too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be an all-time great if he had just died in the 630s, not the 640s. But yeah, if I ever get rich, this is the coin type I want to get. It's pretty awesome.
One day.
Yeah, exactly. One day. This is one I pulled up because it's actually, besides this example, you can get them relatively cheap. A lot of these will sell for about 500 to 1,000, but it's one of the most beautiful depictions of Byzantine artistry on a coin. You sort of got a side-by-side iconographic image of Christ and the Emperor. So you've got Christ Pantocrator on the one side where he's holding his hands in the gesture of benediction, holding the Gospels, and then you've got on the other side the Emperor in full imperial regalia. And it's just an interesting depiction of sort of the Emperor in juxtaposition to Christ. And definitely, I would say, one of the peak Byzantine artistic achievements in numismatics.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think you've just added this type to my watch list now.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. And the nice thing too is they're not very rare. And Constantine VIII, he's not a very good emperor, but I feel like his coins are very nice. And if I were to own one of these types, I would probably buy it just for the artistry, not for any of the history behind it, but just because it's a beautiful depiction of the emperor and Christ. And I feel like this coin itself almost encapsulates the entire history of the empire, in which the emperor presents himself as a servant of Christ, and he sort of got himself and Christ on a coin. I just feel like it's almost like the quintessential Byzantine coin type.
Yeah, it's interesting how similar they look too, with the hair being similar, the beard, just obviously the faces as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that continuity of church and state as one entity in most of the medieval world.
Yeah, so it's definitely a very interesting issue, and they can actually get quite large. You can get some that are closer to like 30 millimeters, but if anything, it sort of harkens back to the solidus of old, sort of just being a flat coin, the emperor on one side, and just a reverse that ties into religion, whether or not that's an angel or Christ. But yeah, I just thought overall a very nice issue. This is a great example of the type, but you can get them a lot cheaper. And this is one I thought was kind of neat. Just an interesting trachea from the late Byzantine Empire, but just stands out because it's a large issue. A lot of times these would have been much smaller, of a lighter weight, and smaller dies. But for whatever reason, the Byzantine emperors of this period would issue different size coins of a size module 1, module 2, or module 3. And this is from that first module, so it's got the largest, most intricate and detailed dies. So I just thought it was pretty interesting that they've got this example offered at CNG. You don't see them very often in this size and of this quality. Obviously, this coin is damaged, but I think it still has some nice artistry there, some potential. Full legends too, a nice strike. I think the estimate at 500 and opening at 300 is a bit too much. I think honestly I would value it at about 150 to 200, and I'm not going to bid at this price, but I thought it was an interesting coin.
Yeah, it's a very cool looking coin. Interesting period of history. Shifting winds all around.
Yeah, shifting empires and kingdoms, warlords, fiefdoms.
Yeah. How did they make these? Were these made with two? I've heard stuff about two different dies being put together, concave dies, and then they struck those at once. Is that right?
Yeah, so that was, I mean, there's some theories about it, but they would have had two different curved dies with a flan in between. And part of the reason why strikes are often so bad is you'd have to get the curvature of both dies exactly the same to get a full-on strike. And of course, with handmade dies, that's almost impossible. So when you would have different angle dies, you either get a flat center or flat outside strikes. You would almost never get a full strike on a coin. So that's part of the issue why these tracheas oftentimes have poor strikes.
Right, that makes sense. Okay.
And no one knows why they were curved like this or a skiffate shape. There's some theories that it was done to sort of prevent counterfeiting, but we know that didn't work because we've got counterfeit examples from the period. Others thought that it just became sort of synonymous with authenticity, that over time the people expected their coins to be skiffate, so they were made skiffate. But interestingly, towards the end of the empire, the coins revert to being flat, and that's just about the same time as the Venetian grosso becomes popular. So as the medieval Italian trading cities become more and more influential, you see that the actual sort of Byzantine elements on coins fade away and they adopt those Western European styles.
Interesting. Geopolitics at play in numismatics.
Yeah, exactly. It is pretty interesting. I thought this was just a cool coin to share, but I think it is a bit overpriced as is, and I would be a little surprised if it sells. And then last but not least, I've got this coin. This is actually one that I'm selling myself. Just thought I'd do a quick shout out. I don't know if people remember, I made a video a long time ago on a group lot I'd bought and that I was selling, kind of on how to make money with ancient coins, and that was a group lot I picked up for about $600 with 10 coins that I was able to sell for a lot more. And this is just one of those put up for sale. But I thought I would show it. It's a pretty interesting coin from John VI Cantacuzene. He is a very influential emperor, one of the last great emperors of the Byzantine Empire. And this is a unique coin of his, or second known, a double basilicon. So it's sort of like a medallion-esque coin of an unusual weight. Just a cool piece, unpublished in all the references. Just thought it was nice enough to give a shout out here.
Yeah, very cool looking coin. I see what you mean about them looking more Western European by then. That looks a lot like a Venetian grosso or something from Western Europe. It's flat, it's got the double figures on the reverse and the seated, I presume the king on the front.
That's Christ, yeah.
Yeah. This
would have been from a military mint most likely, so that's kind of why it looks so so crude, you might say. This is probably one of those you're going to buy just for the rarity and the history versus the artistry. If you like artistic merit, you're probably not collecting late Byzantine.
Yeah, no, that is a cool coin. Congrats on that. Good job.
Yeah,
Clearly,
thanks. That lot turned out
yeah.
pretty well. I think I sold like the first 8 coins for about like 1,600 plus this now. So it's like, yeah, that was a pretty good buy. But watch that video if people are interested in how you make money on ancient coins. I think that was just a good introduction, how you can find group lots, buy those, and then flip them if you know what to look for. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this video, this discussion of CNG feature sale 121. That'll be October 6th through 8th, so just in a couple days here. I think that's pretty much the end of this week, this weekend maybe, or next weekend when the sale is, the actual days. But I'm not sure if anyone in our audience will be bidding, but if so, I wish you all the best luck. And Antoine on that Cretan coin, I hope all goes the best there.
Thank you, and I hope this one of yours keeps climbing.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time as always.
Yeah, as ever, it was a joy. Thank
Yeah,
you.
have a nice weekend. See ya.
You too.